Well, hey kids, Rio here. Welcome back to the channel. Today is Wednesday, so of course today is the next in my series of film reviews, and I am continuing with my holiday series. Now this choice might be a little controversial, so hear me out before you come at me in the comments. Today we're going to be talking about a film called The Hebrew Hammer.
Adam Goldberg is The Hebrew Hammer.
So, I've said before in this series that some of the films I'm going to be talking about will not be family-friendly films. This is not a family-friendly film. This is, in fact, a rated R film. For reasons. Okay, now we're going to address a lot of the controversy that goes with this movie before I go into anything else. Okay, we're just going to get this out of the way right now. So The Hebrew Hammer actually started as a short film that was written and directed by Jonathan Kesselman when he was at USC back in 2000. I've seen the short film. The short film is actually what got him the funding for the feature length. The short film and the feature length are completely different cast and crew, with the exception of Jonathan Kesselman, of course, because it's his creation. This film lost a lot of points with people, like kind of right from the jump. A couple of things, is that first of all, they were in fact sued by the Anti-Defamation League, for the way that it represents, Jewish people in the movie. They did lose that court case. They were not, then the film was allowed to be released. The same time, many Christian organizations also filed, lawsuits against the release of the film, claiming that it makes Christianity on the whole look anti-Semitic. They also lost those cases, and the film was allowed to be released. Now, two things that happen. One is there's a scene in the movie where you have a group that's called the Jewish Justice League, and it's almost a direct parody, like a total swipe at the ADL. And I wonder sometimes if that scene was already in the movie or if they added it after the lawsuit thing. I don't know if he was being petty or not. And then when the film was released on their official website, they had a little game you could play that was basically a skin of Space Invaders called Gentile Invaders. And you used a little menorah to shoot dropping swastikas. Okay, so obviously Mr. Kesselman, his power of snark is high. Okay? And it seems like a lot of people really got kind of cheesed off about this movie. The one thing to note is that a number of scenes they were filming in a Hasidic district in New York, I believe. So there was a number of Orthodox Jewish men that were around when this film was being made, and they didn't care. In fact, several of them actually agreed to be background characters walking around in the neighborhood. So I guess you take that for what it's worth.
When there's danger on the streets and evil is everywhere, the only solution is circumcised.
Let's talk about what the movie's about. Let's move on to the fun stuff, shall we? So, this is I only use the word Jewsploitation film. If you've ever seen a blaxploitation movie or a sexploitation film, if you've ever seen stuff like Shaft, Sweet Sweetback, Sweet Ass Song, Sugar Hill. If you are familiar with blaxploitation or sexploitation movies, this is an exploitation film. Okay? It's just, we've focused instead of on these particular ethnic groups, we are now on this particular ethnic group. And our main hero is Mordecai Carver. Mordecai Carver, who is a private detective. And he has been called up by the Jewish Justice League, because a change in power at the North Pole has now put Hanukkah in danger.
In less than 24 hours, Hanukkah will be no more.
All right, let me go a little further because it gets even crazier. So, we meet Santa, and Santa is kind of just doing sort of a, state of the pole kind of meeting with his staff and explaining how he has worked so hard to try to have some kind of unity between the three major holidays that are celebrated in December. Okay? That being Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa. And he's like, I've worked with the Kwanzaa Liberation Front. We'll get to that in a minute. And then of course the Jewish Justice League, and to try to make all of these things work. Well, apparently his son, is not a fan.
Santa's been rubbed out by his evil son Damien.
I'm Santa now!
So, Santa gets shanked by his own kid, who then takes over the North Pole and launches his war on Hanukkah. There's a lot of James Bond kind of stuff going on in here. This is probably a better parody of James Bond than any of the Austin Powers movies. And don't get me wrong, I freaking love Austin Powers, man. I can quote that movie till the end of time, any of them. But this works better. I don't know. But so this is where we come in. This is our story, and Mordecai has to use all of his skills and all of his intelligence, all of his knowledge, that he might save Hanukkah from being destroyed by Damien Claus, the evil Santa, who has now taken over the North Pole. And it just gets ridiculous. Okay, I can't even begin. This movie is hard to describe to people, just because you're like, wait, they do what now? It's very hard to describe this thing scene by scene. You can't. I just accept that this is the story, and then just see where it takes you, because it gets so nuts at certain points. You're like, oh, what?
We have to put into place an agent. The Hebrew Hammer.
Your confirmation test initiated.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, so as I said, the film is written and directed by Jonathan Kesselman. And this was his writing and directorial debut for a feature film. He did go on to do some other work, including some work with Ang Lee in 2016. But as far as I know, this is the only really big thing I can find for him. And just throwing it out there, there is at the very end of the credits, there is a dedication to a Jack Kesselman, who, yes, is in fact Jonathan's father, and was also a member of the Israeli Defense Forces during World War II. I believe he has a book out. His father had written a book about his experiences and what that was like. So, the more you know. Now, our score is by Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, who actually did a lot of the music for the Evil Dead Regeneration video game. And there's a lot of original music that's in this one, including the main theme for the Hebrew Hammer. The main theme is this glorious play on the theme from Shaft. We all know the theme from Shaft, right? It's a play on the theme from Shaft, and it doesn't say who performs it. All it told me is that the music was written by Michael Cohen and the lyrics were written by Jonathan Kesselman. That's all I got. I don't know who's performing it, but I want to find out. It's dead on parody. I love it.
Who's the certified circumcised dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks?
Now, this film does include a lot of needle drops, too. There's a lot of needle drops that are actually really interesting. They come in different places, but again, this is kind of one of the things of the aesthetic of the exploitation film, right? So just a couple of these needle drops I just want to mention. There's Christmas standards, of course, like Deck the Halls, Jingle Bells, right? There's some of them in there. But you got Fight the Power by the Isley Brothers. You've got Pusher Man by Curtis Mayfield. Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. And you actually get an original song by the Hammer himself, Adam Goldberg, which is it's only part of it's in the movie, but the rest of it plays over the credits. And there is, of course, a Sly and the Family Stone song that's sampled in this movie, and I'm not comfortable saying the title. It's Don't Call Me This, You. Okay, we'll leave it there. Now, of course, we have our special effects. And I don't know if these guys were responsible for any of the set designs, but some of these set pieces are really, you can tell they put some work into these things. This was not a cheap production by any means. But for special effects, we have a number of people listed. I'm going to focus on a couple. Drew Giratano, who worked on The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Hey, I said it without getting stuck. Steve Katz, who was worked on Planet of the Apes 2004 and Hellboy. And I really want to call out the costume designer. The main costume designer is Alyssa Raycraft. So she's the one responsible for the look of the Hammer, as well as everybody else. You would have seen her work. The Invitation, The Office, and the movie Get Smart. So she worked on Get Smart, she already knows, right? Beautiful work, lovely pieces. There's a lot of stuff that it's like, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to call her out specifically. Okay, so let's talk about our cast now. So let's talk about our cast. So, of course, we have Mordecai Carver, the Hebrew Hammer, who is being played by Adam Goldberg. Now, Adam Goldberg, okay, he was in A Beautiful Mind, Dazed and Confused, Saving Private Ryan. You've seen him in a lot of things. You know who he is. Okay. Then we have the character of Esther, who is the femme fatale / love interest / damsel in distress. She's being played by Judy Greer. You would have seen her in Ant-Man. You would have seen her in 13 Going on 30. Also Jurassic World, apparently. She was in Jurassic World, too. And now, of course, we get to Santa, the lamented late Santa, was being played by Richard Riel. You would have known him from Office Space. He was also in Deuce Bigelow. And then, of course, there's Damien Claus. Damien Claus is being played by Andy Dick.
And Andy Dick.
Someone's gonna get everything they want for Christmas this year. Next!
Now, as we say, there's controversy that comes with this movie. Well, there's controversy that comes everywhere with Andy Dick. I don't want to go too much into his thing. I mean, honestly, you can look up the stuff that he's been accused of, actually gotten in trouble for, so on and so forth. I don't know how much of that was in play when this movie was made. To be honest, I do not know. But Andy Dick can unto himself be problematic. But realistically, in this movie, he's really funny. As Damien Claus, like, it's so cartoony, the way that the villain is played. Okay, and if anybody can do over-the-top cartoony, Andy Dick is that guy. So that works out pretty well for me. So keep in mind that, yeah, he's in there.
Excuse me, children. He plans on personally canceling Christmas.
Attention Kmart shoppers, there are Jews in aisle 12.
Okay, now this is another one that has a lot of cameos. Man, I love me some cameos. There's quite a few in here, actually. First of all, we have Mario Van Peebles, who is the leader of the Kwanzaa Liberation Front. Which they play them out a lot like the Black Panthers, essentially. So you can kind of get that was the aesthetic of the joke, right? And then we also have his dad. We also have Melvin Van Peebles, the original Sweetback. We get a cameo from an actual blaxploitation actor. I'm good with that. Let me see. We got a lot of characters that pop up in here. So we have Mordecai's mom is Nora Dunn from Saturday Night Live. Was playing his mom. And listen, I got to tell you that early in the movie, we have to deal with them where he comes to his mother's for a Shabbat dinner. That is the most cringe-worthy family dinner I've ever seen. Hilarious. Absolutely hysterical. Nora Dunn is a gift.
There's a reason they call him the Hebrew Hammer.
For whatever reason, by the way, in this dinner scene, there is another cameo in the scene. I guess an exchange student? I don't know. They never explain why this person is there. But there's a man sitting at the table, an elderly Asian man named Mun Chi. And it was really hilarious too because I kept going, what is he doing here? And that doesn't matter because you know who he is. This is the actor that played the Prime Minister of Malaysia in Zoolander. What's his actual name? Woodrow W. Asai is his name. Yeah, he was the Prime Minister from Zoolander. No idea what he's doing there, but there he is. Okay. There's other characters like this too. There's an elf who turns as informant on the evil Santa. And he's played by Tony Cox. Always happy to see Tony Cox in anything. You've seen him, of course. He was the little priest in Beetlejuice, and you've seen him in a million things. You know who he is. I've actually mentioned him in another review. And this one I found fun, because there's a scene in the beginning of the movie, which is supposed to be Mordecai as a kid going to a Christian school as they all celebrate Christmas. Okay, so in this scene is a teacher, and the teacher is, of course, trying to explain tolerance and understanding. So the teacher is actually played by Annie McEnroe, who was Jane Butterfield in the original Beetlejuice. Okay. Really bizarre walk-ons, like, all through this. And it goes so fast. The pace of this film is so frenetic. You almost don't have time to think about too much of anything. It just kind of keeps moving. Okay, this is a couple more of these real quick. So the head of the Jewish Justice League is actually played by Peter Coyote, which is kind of fun. And Damian Claus, of course, has his flunky. His flunky is Tiny Tim. Moving on, his flunky is Tiny Tim. And Tiny Tim is being played by Sean Whalen. You would have seen him in People Under the Stairs and Twister. So yeah, there's a lot of people in this thing. And so many walkthroughs, and I probably haven't even caught them all.
The Hebrew Hammer.
The bad, bold, big-nosed biblical brother.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? This one, probably a controversial choice, because this one's not really going to be for everybody. And yeah, this one, you know, could be offensive to somebody somewhere. I'm not going to try to defend whether or not you're offended. If you are, then you are. But what I will say is I think maybe that's what they were going for. I mean, if you're going to parody the exploitation film, like the way that's done, that formula, it worked. And they put a lot of great work into the costuming and a lot of great work into the set designs and set pieces. A lot of stunt people that worked on this. There's a lot of really good action sequences in here. My personal takeaway is I don't think the film's offensive. I don't think it's any more offensive than a sexploitation or a blaxploitation film would be. You know what I mean? I don't think it's any more offensive. It's doing exactly what those films did, just with a different group. So how you feel about this one will be entirely up to you. But I will again throw out the fact that this is an R-rated film, and this one is definitely not going to be for kids, like, at all. So if you are going to watch it, this is one for grown-ups all the way. All right, kids. Well, I guess that's going to do it for me on this one. There's a like and subscribe button down here somewhere. You guys can hit that. You'll get notifications of when my next reviews go up. So got a few more in this series to go. So hopefully you'll join me for some of the other stuff that I pull up.